Hi, I'm Mark, and I'm the human behind the podcast you're listening to right now. I'm really looking to learn more about what our listeners like and don't like about our shows. So if you're listening and you have opinions about these podcasts, I would love the chance to chat with you personally. There's a link in the show notes with how to get in touch, or you could email me at hello@lanternpodcast.com. Thanks. Now back to the episode.
Megan Gustafson just crossed 800 career WNBA points by lighting up the Fever. And now Indiana's 4-4 with Commissioner's Cup pressure showing up fast.
Indiana Fever Daily. And before I say anything else about vibes, I need the ClutchPoints Week 3 rankings in front of me. Because Atlanta being 5-2 suddenly makes that gap feel very real.
We've got the Gustafson milestone, the power rankings hit, and a camp injury report that goes a long way toward explaining why Portland's interior looked wide open all night. Stick with us. From Ruleta Interactiva.
There's something undeniably captivating about watching a sports phenom collide with the unforgiving nature of professional competition. Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's newest darling, just experienced that collision in a way that's both humbling and instructive. Her 6-point outing in the Indiana Fever's blowout loss to the Portland Fire isn't just a stat line. It's a moment that forces us to rethink how we view stardom, resilience, and the pressure of being the face of a league.
Ruleta Interactiva called the Portland game the Caitlin Clark conundrum. Stardom meets reality, humanizing her, all that. But the actual game is simpler. Megan Gustafson hit 800 career points the night before, then went right at Indiana's interior. That's the basketball reason the Fever lost, and Hawkeye's wire had the right angle on it.
Clark went 1 for 7, sure, but the bigger issue is Gustafson owning the paint. I've been saying since week 1 that the defense was going to show up on the scoreboard eventually, and now it has. ClutchPoints has Indiana at 4-4 and Atlanta at 5-2, and that's the cost.
A couple days ago, we were talking about this team being one stop away from 7-1. Now Portland is the third game where that stop never came. At 4-4 with Atlanta ahead in the power rankings, this is a structural issue, not a one-night thing.
And remember Sophie Cunningham saying this group had the talent to be defensively dominant. Gustafson basically put that quote through the shredder. The Caitlin Clark conundrum framing is a dodge. Indiana can't stop a post player when it matters.
Scott Agnes, writing in Fieldhouse Files.
It's my final update from training camp because the Indiana Fever are now on to the regular season. After 3 weeks, 12 practices, and 3 exhibition games, the Fever spent the last 2 days prepping for their season opener against the Dallas Wings on Saturday. Monique Billings, ankle, did more in practice and is listed as questionable. Only Justine Pissat, who is on a development contract, was ruled out. Lexi Hull will be on a minutes restriction.
Scott Agnes filed this from Gainbridge Fieldhouse on May 8th. Final camp report before the season. The injury notes were Monique Billings on an ankle, Lexi Hull on a minutes restriction, and Justine Pissat ruled out on a development deal. Walker-Kimbrough, Harris, and White were all in the headline too. So Agnes was clearly tracking those spots before the first regular season minute.
And now we're 4-4 and just got cooked by an expansion team's interior. So the question isn't whether they were healthy for Game 1. It's whether the depth issues Agnes flagged back in camp are still hanging over this rotation.
Hull being on a minutes restriction right out of the gate keeps jumping out at me. If her workload was being managed in early May, that has to affect how the wing rotation actually settled once the games started counting.
Billings was questionable with an ankle in opening week, and Portland just dropped 100 on us. I'm not saying those things are directly linked, but the front court depth picture Agnes described in camp did not sound ready for a physical interior.
Here's Smart Data Week.
As the Indiana Fever gear up for their training camp, the spotlight, as always, is firmly fixed on Caitlin Clark. After a 2025 season that was unfortunately defined more by her absence from the court than her dazzling presence on it, the narrative surrounding Clark heading into the 2026 season is one of renewed optimism and, crucially, health.
The Clark health story is already done. She entered 2026 camp fully healthy. She's been on the floor, and the Fever are 4-4. Smart Data Week is still writing like the season hasn't started.
13 games in 2025 because of the quad, groin, and ankle. I lived through every one of those absences, so yes, I'm glad she's healthy. But Portland just hung 100 on the Fever, so Caitlin Clark is 100% is not the part I need right now.
We're moving on. Her health is confirmed, it's been confirmed, and today the box score is the thing that needs explaining. Zach Heine, writing in Hawkeye's Wire.
After a slow start, the Fire settled in and took it to Indiana, ultimately winning the game 100-84. Gustafson was a huge reason why. Gustafson was unstoppable, scoring 22 points on a perfect 8-for-8 shooting night from the field. She did it in just 28 minutes, carving up the Fever's defense.
The Portland story has a name now. Megan Gustafson. 22 points, 8 shots, 8 makes, 28 minutes. That makes her the 15th player in WNBA history to score 20-plus without missing a field goal. And she'd already hit 800 career points the night before.
That's the part that gets me. She's on her 5th team in 8 years, finally lands in Portland, and picks the Fever for the second-best game of her pro career. That interior matchup was trouble before tip-off, and Indiana never answered it.
The Clark-Gustafson-Iowa angle is a good story, but the basketball story is bigger. The Fever gave up 100 to an expansion team because they couldn't contain a center who went 8 for 8 in under 30 minutes. That's a specific defensive breakdown, not bad vibes.
Cunningham said last week this team had the talent to be dominant defensively. Gustafson just gave that quote another scoreboard test, and the Fever failed this one even harder.
Here's Jess Coffey at ClutchPoints.
The first few weeks of the 2026 WNBA season have already delivered plenty of surprises. Unexpected teams are proving themselves to be much more competitive than anticipated, while several preseason contenders are still searching for consistency, and a handful of squads have emerged from the pack as legitimate championship threats.
ClutchPoints dropped its Week 3 power rankings on June 1st. Atlanta is sitting at number 2. The Dream are 5-2, and the Fever are below that at 4-4. That gap in the East isn't just a standings column anymore, it has an audit trail now.
And Atlanta dropping to number 2 means somebody climbed over them. That's the Lynx at number 1, with the best record in the league. Indiana isn't chasing one team, they're chasing the whole top half of these rankings while absorbing a loss to Portland.
The ClutchPoints framing is that the middle of the league is tight, and one strong week can move you fast, which is true. The Fever just spent their chance at a strong week losing to an expansion team. And that's a rough place to be once Commissioner's Cup games start mattering.
Week 1, we were talking about Indiana leading the WNBA in offense. Week 3, ClutchPoints has them behind a 5-2 Atlanta team. Those aren't two separate stories. That's the same one catching up to itself.
If you like staying close to your team every day, try Angel City Daily Podcast, a daily ACFC supporter briefing with match reaction, NWSL standings, roster moves, women's soccer in Los Angeles, and supporter buzz. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We've put links to every story from today's episode in the show notes, so if something caught your ear, you can dig in there. That's Indiana Fever Daily Podcast for today. This is a Lantern podcast.